agenda. You got an agenda?
Did I not get the agendas? I'm sorry. I started, I passed them around, sorry. I started doing this, it didn't work.
Hi, Dave. Good morning. How are you today? It's a pretty big bag. It was nice to see.
It's good. It's good.
And that'll last a
HSDR submittal, getting that permit. It seems like it's going to be a pretty painless process. However, they want to do new survey of the entire beach, which is going to be about $75,000. So I'm trying to use the previous data to say the beach has changed dramatically, but we're still waiting on word from DEP. So.
Morning, everybody. Let's go ahead and get started. It's 9 o'clock. This is the November 1st meeting of the Beach Management Advisory Committee. Welcome, guests. We do have a quorum. Do we have any public comment on the agenda items?
We have some copies of the agenda up here, if anybody like to take a look at it real quick. Or I guess there's some over there.
Rest of my,
No, I'll give everybody a chance to meet, you know, if they have, if one got one thing in their business. So, I'll ask if anybody got any further comments on anything.
Everybody had a chance to look at it? Have any comments? Okay, let's move on. Next item is approval of last month's minutes, or last meeting's minutes. We have a motion to approve. Motion to approve. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion carries. Next item is the update on the hurricane storm damage reduction project. Matt?
Yeah, no real major update this week. The last time we talked, I went to the BCC, I believe it was September 20th, gave them an update on where we were, the recommendation of the Beach Management Committee. We received direction from the BCC to investigate pulling the regulatory authorizations for the HSDR project. That's both the DEP and the Corps authorizations. I'm coordinating with both of those agencies right now to find out the exact specifics of what's going to be required for the application and timelines. We're going to come back and bring that to the Beach Management Committee and the TDC. And then the other item presented to the BCC was a public workshop to discuss alternative or beach management alternatives. And we've had some scheduling difficulties, staff availability, the holidays, the election, new commissioners coming on board. So it's been a little bit difficult for us to get that scheduled, but I think we're looking at shortly after the first of the year. Is that right? So that'll be coming back, and I believe we'll be meeting before that time. So we'll bring that date back to you guys, and if not, it'll certainly be public notice for at least a couple weeks, and give everybody plenty of time to be notified and attend. But that's it.
Would you refresh our memory a little bit on this? Now that the Corps is not doing the project, we need a Corps permit, right?
That's correct. So right now, all of our eggs were in that the HSDR basket, so to speak. And since that project has been tabled, the Corps of Engineers withdrew the permit application from DEP. So as it is now, we do not have any permit authorization to do anything. What my recommendation was is, let's go ahead and pull that authorization from not only DEP, but let's also pull that from the Corps of Engineers. So should a major storm event come And worst case, should we lose federal involvement, meaning the HSDR project goes away, the county still controls their own destiny and still could do their own beach restoration project, dune restoration project. So what we're looking at doing is permitting the full-blown project, but this was very clear from the BCC's direction with the sole intent of putting that up on the shelf. So we're not getting the permits to go construct the project. It's just to have the permits ready and available should the time come, or should the need come.
How long are the permits good for?
We'll request 10 years, but DEP is now pushing or allowing 15-year authorizations. So we'll push for the longest authorization we can get. So I would assume minimum 10 years.
So the DEP permit will probably be pretty easy since it's already done. We're just pretty much changing the permitting to the county, right?
That's correct, and it sounds easy enough, and we've had a couple teleconferences as it is now, but there's been a pretty good amount of time that's lapsed. It's been a couple years since that original application went in, and what we're working on now is the specific details. Are they going to require an updated survey? Are they going to require any significant updates to the environmental assessments? So that's what we're working through now.
Would that change the erosion control line, updated surveys?
Yes, it would. The erosion control line was never recorded, but if we were to do those surveys, what I would recommend is we collect them next summer during a wide position in the beach to where, should the ECL be recorded or should the mean high water line position be recorded at that time, we're at least showing a wide, expansive beach to benefit the upland property owners. But we're hoping, we don't have to go through and resurvey the beach. It is a pretty extensive cost. But when we make application for the permit, there will be no ECL. The ECL will only be recorded if and when a project moves forward. So it's what's known as a notice to proceed condition of the permit. So before DEP issues you the notice to proceed, you will then record the ECL through the state procedures. So we may have the survey, but we are not going to record the official ECL anytime in the near future.
When they survey, at what frequency down the beach do they take data points?
We have monuments, the DEP has monuments established every 1,000 feet. And a typical monitoring procedure is to survey every 1,000 feet all the way from the far upland dune all the way down to the negative 30, negative 40-foot contour. So they go out, a couple thousand feet into the water. Now for a mean high water, and that's every 1,000 feet throughout the entire county shoreline, that's where the majority of the cost comes in. For an ECL or mean high water line survey, you typically survey the beach every 40 to 50 feet. So you actually have a survey crew that walks down the shoreline and they take a small profile from the +2 to -2, and then they take all that data back, they process it, and then they determine through a computer program where exactly the mean high water line lies, where that elevation lies.
Okay.
So it's a much more detailed survey with the mean high water.
Okay. So when they're surveying from the beach, so to speak, they go on these art monuments that are 1,000-foot intervals, and then you say they survey down that line going north-south, taking
Yes.
points
Yep.
all the way to 1,000 feet out in the water?
And it's more like 3,000 feet out.
3,000 feet out
Yeah.
into the water.
So that's what's known as a full beach profile. So that gives us a picture of the dune, the upland beach, the offshore bars, as well as all the way out beyond the offshore bar.
Okay.
Those are surveys that are typically used to assess the volume changes from year to year. And DEP's been doing that since the early 70s. So we have a pretty expansive data set. We could go back and, should we get the data, it would be a nice benefit to the county. We can go back and assess from the last survey in 2013, have we lost any beach? Have we lost beach width? Have we lost volume? Where did it go? You need that full complete data set to make, or to perform those analyses. But it really is kind of apples and oranges, the mean high water line survey versus your standard beach profile monitoring.
I got you. Then you commented that the survey we done in the summer because our tides don't vary as much as they do in the winter. In other words,
It's not so much the tide. The elevation for the mean high water line is going to stay the same. And a lot of you been here know in the summertime we have nice wide expansive beaches. In the wintertime they tend to erode a little bit. That sand, the upland beach erodes, it goes into the offshore bar. So if we were to record the mean high water line in the dead of winter after a major storm event, that's going to show a very small upland dry beach. Whereas if we were to record it in the summertime, we would show a wider, more expansive upland dry beach. And that's when I mean that there's going to be more benefit to the upland property owner should that survey be used for the ECL recording.
gotcha.
I think there was some discussion, Lisa, you probably remember this, we had previously surveyed in October, and some beaches did show some very wide expansive areas, and I think further along the eastern portion of the county, Inlet Beach, there was some erosion occurring there, kind of what happened, this past fall and this spring. The beaches were a bit narrowed and not what you would say a typical condition of that beach over there. So that's what we'll try and shoot for, a typical summertime wide beach condition. So, and then again, caveat that, should it be required. My recommendation would be to not do the surveying just because of the expense, but we'll cross that bridge when we get there, have this conversation with DEP.
Okay. And as this meeting gets scheduled, everybody in this committee will be notified via our typical email distribution. If any of the public wants to be notified of it, send Stacy an email or give her your card. She'll put you on a list. As beach vendors, you'll be notified automatically through our distribution system. And of course, it'll also be advertised on our website, county website, local newspaper of record, and all that. Should be in mid-January, maybe third week of January. Okay.
The core permit, being that they did all the work, were the original permittee, how long do you think it would take to get the permit from them? I know the core is typically just ridiculous.
Like molasses. I would think that we could get that permit within 3 to 4 months.
Oh, really?
And the reason I say that is because the Corps of Engineers, when they were running the project, they do not permit themselves. However, they still have to run through all the environmental assessments, the engineering analysis. So the work has been done, it's just not been formalized in a regulatory authorization. So since the work has been done, I'd say a lot of the difficult part is over. But yeah, getting them to author a permit is still going to be a little painful, but we'll get through it.
All right, thanks, man.
Any comments or questions from the public on this? Okay. Sorry.
Moving on to new business. Everybody had a look at the beach code enforcement activity report. Oh, wait a minute, I didn't see that. I just looked at the waterways and activities.
Yeah. Short presentation.
Okay.
What there is in the package here is a copy of Chapter 22, and that's our current copy. Do we have any extra copies of this, Stacy?
No.
So we have this Chapter 22 in its current version. It does not contain the ordinance revision that was adopted last week, or the week before by the County Commission concerning customary use. A little history on that. It was adopted. It has an effective date in 2017, April 1st, I believe is what they said. And so anyway, that's not in here, but current code does contain the revision, section 2255, that was adopted earlier in the summer, and that is about posts, ropes, and chains, and fences and stuff. So I asked y'all to read this back in March, and then think about any changes to Chapter 22 that would make our beach a better place. And then the other document is the FY16 Beach Code Enforcement Annual Report, and it's what I call our activity report. And it has some information in it, a summary of all of our enforcement activities by category and by category disposition. So disposition is we encounter somebody that is on the beach. They can, in most cases, they can either be compliant, they receive a verbal warning, a written warning, or a citation. As code enforcement officers, we're governed by Florida Statute 162, and of course by county code that has rules and regulations on how we enforce the code. So not everybody we encounter is automatically receives a citation. There is some officer discretion involved there as well. But typically, if you're non-compliant, we encounter you receive a warning, depending on the category or the violation and the severity of it. It could be a verbal warning or a written warning. And then if we encounter you again, it's typically a written citation that includes a monetary fine. So, as we look down through our table of contents, we have an activity report, and we have a narrative associated with that, a summary report, and then a summary of that section. Second area or category of that is beach ordinance complaint report. We log complaints as they come in. In the past couple of years, we've taken complaints in various forms. It can be as simple as a phone call. We like to have written documentation of it. We do have a complaint form that we distribute electronically. This year, we're going to install it as a fillable form on our website. And we're also going to change our way we receive complaints. All complaints now are going to have to be submitted on a form, and so that we have accurate information of the complainant, the type of complaint, hopefully specific area with addresses if it can be, if not a general landmark like a beach access number or description, so that we'll have a better documentation of how the complaints came in. Like I say, in the past, we've proceeded by phone, by email, by word of mouth on the beach. And then the other way we initiate enforcement activity is by proactive, where we encounter in our daily patrols, and we basically initiate the action. Another thing we changed this year is at the first of last fiscal year, FY16, we started using a Microsoft Access-based database collection system. And in that, that's how we were able to take complaints in different forms. Because what we do is we take a complaint, we immediately enter the system, and then the next officer that came on shift would review. If it's in his area, he would pick up that complaint and make a case out of it. The case may be just investigating the complaint, see if it was a viable complaint or not. So our complaint ratio or number compared to last year went up dramatically because we had a new way of taking these in. So I didn't compare that like I did from FY15 to FY14. I didn't do FY16 to FY15 in that category. Moving on down, within that ordinance complaint report is the narrative summary, a graph that gives a graphical representation by complaint, the complaint log, and then within that is also the beach offender list. Next section is wildlife lighting complaint report. It's very similar to the beach ordinance complaint report. Wildlife lighting ordinance is one of the items that we enforce as a traditional code enforcement way. In other words, it's typically, or it's always property based. They receive a 30-day notice to cure after we investigate. We follow up after that 30 days is up. If they're not cured, they then get remanded to the code board. More than likely, they attempt to correct it. There are some ambiguities in the wildlife lighting ordinance, which is actually Chapter 5 of the Land Development Code, or a portion of Chapter 5, that while they work good in theory, sometimes in reality, with the relationship of a single-family dwelling to the flat portion of the beach, fixtures that are deemed wildlife compliant aren't necessarily wildlife compliant. So we're working with the different agencies that monitor and help us enforce that. South Walton Turtle Watch, Street Side Code Enforcement, Walton County Legal Department, on how to get those revised so that we can be more effective in that. But that's section 3. It's the same thing. It's a narrative and a summary, and then a complaint log. The next section 4 is FY 2016 beach vending code revisions update. So it's a narrative summary. That's where we talked about what we did in 2016, if it was effective. If you recall, people that were here then, Board of County Commissioners decided that no revisions needed to be adopted, that FY 2015 was a fairly calm year. So that was fairly short. Section 5 is the beach code revision recommendations. So each year, the BCC and TDC asks us to come back at the end of the year with what we believe are recommendations that will make the beach a better place for all concerned. Will also make it easier for the municipal codes that involve the beach, are easier to understand as well as enforce. So that's what section 5 is. And then I have it done by the 3 major sections where we felt that there is some areas that either language can be changed, policy can be changed on how it is administrated, and just outright omission or change to a complete section. And then FY17, that's just an update on what we plan for this upcoming year as far as our resources, our data collection systems, and what we expect out of the year. So I hope everybody had a chance to read that. This is also available online. I don't know if anybody had a chance. It was distributed at our 2 meetings. The way we compile this information, once again, it's our activity report, which is a collection of all of our activity. We have 2 post-season, what we call beach vending meetings. They're open to the public for anybody that uses the beach to come and offer input as to how the year went, what was done good, what was done bad, and what can be done better. Once again, our goal as beach code enforcement is to make a beach that is harmonious to everybody concerned. We have a lot of different people using the beach. We have locals, we have day trippers that come down from the north part of the county, come from Lower Alabama. We have the what I call the 7-day visitor that comes in, from out of town to stay here. Of course, we have weekend visitors. And then we have people that use the beach for commercial enterprise. And we have the Gulfront beach owner. As you know, a lot of our property, or some of our property in Walton County is under the main high water line. So we have a lot of different people that use this beach in different ways. And our goal as beach code enforcement is to make it as harmonious as we can for everybody. So I'm not going to go through too much of the activity report summary. I hope everybody's had a chance to look at these different categories and see, kind of gives an idea of what we encountered on the beach and how we impart enforcement action on it. The complaint log, once again, is catalyst to what we feel is affecting people that use the beach. I know that we have people of different categories that complain more than other people, so it's not something we go solely by, but it is a good indicator of what's not making the beach harmonious. And so as you look down through that, you can kind of see vendor leave no trace was a high item. That actually is high because we changed the ordinance or the code in midstream with that 2255 section. And so that captures a lot of that. We had a lot of complaints about that once that ordinance was adopted. And then our time period, our grace period we gave people to cure. And then in the smaller grace periods after we started encountering people, sorry, we got to notify everybody to cut off their devices. Anyway. In that time period of when that ordinance was adopted to when the grace period was, and then when we encountered them and gave them first notice, there was a lot of complaints rolling in. So that was why that one seems a little skewed. The other ones were, of course, the typical ones we have, which is vendor early setup, ghost sets. As we went through the ghost set complaints, we have some complaints that are viable and some that are non-viable. And so, as we have different relationships with beach ownership, sometimes a go-set complaint would not necessarily be a viable complaint because it was a complaint on a resort community that controlled that portion of the flat sandy beach. And they have different rules and regulations of what they can set up as. They're bound by typically the contract they have with the resort community or condo or whatever. And so they would have empty sets. But we did receive a lot of go-set complaints on public beach at our regional beach accesses. And even though there is a viable excuse in that the way the beach vendor does business, which is sometimes it's a daily contract, most likely it's a weekly contract, and then sometimes it's an annual contract. And so the person that uses the chair, of course, doesn't use it all day or all week or all year, but the vendor bound by his contractual obligations and because of their operating, their typical operating standards of I set up in the morning at turtle text time and I break down at 5 o'clock in the evening, invariably leaves empty chairs on the beach. So, did everybody get a chance to look through this? As committee members? Okay. Is there any questions so far as to what I've talked about or any comments?
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
I know that there have been a lot of things that are not actually reported to code enforcement because, of response time. And the best case in point is dogs off leash.
Yes, ma'am.
Or dogs, in the off hours, if you will. By the time you can somehow report it and somebody gets there, the dogs are gone. And I can even say this, I've given up. I've only very rarely done it, and only if dogs are chasing wildlife.
Yes, ma'am.
Or bothering people, but by the time anybody can get there, they're gone. Is there going to be any sort of a way that people that do complain have any privacy? Because sometimes there's some sort of vindictive situations where even though someone has made constructive, factual complaints, they kind of end up, people end up finding out who complained. I haven't had this happen, but I'm sure, I know a few people that have, and then it turns into a really ugly situation.
Yes, ma'am. We're bound by, proper record retention, and then, of course, anything that is public record, is available to the public for review. In order to keep, accurate records, it invariably means using some sort of communication system that is open for the general public to request the records from. Now, legal department does have certain rules and regulations of redaction for personal information. So we attempt to run everything through legal department. As you know, you've been through the sunshine training. There are certain rules if we're asked for records. There are rules of engagement, so to speak. And a lot of times it doesn't necessarily give us the opportunity to redact information. If it's documents in the form of a complaint form, that is a hard document, and somebody asks for all the 2016 complaints, we're bound by state regulations to turn those over.
So there's no possibility of something like the
I would have to check the city.
Criminal, it's not that this is criminal, so don't go there. I don't want to go there, but there's ways you can report anonymously certain criminal activity,
Yes, ma'am.
things like that. I wonder if there'd be an option for people to be able to report at least certain kinds of things without fear of that. And I personally have heard on a couple of occasions where one of our deputies or code enforcement personnel has specifically told a person who has committed a violation, let's call it, who reported them. And I think that's a deterrent for people eventually be willing to report things that maybe should be reported.
Yes, ma'am. I can understand your thinking on that. Once again, we have to be very careful of how people ask us questions. And as you're aware that, it can just be a simple question, and it may be construed or later defended as it was a public records request. And if we deny that information, then we're guilty of it and, could possibly be held to some sort of legal action. Let me discuss with Sydney on exactly how they filter the information. But I do know that there are some areas of redaction concerning certain personal information. And I'll report back to you, and then I'll also distribute the rest of the community. Other questions to the board rail so far? What I'd like to do is, I'm not looking all the thick of that, but I would like to start with that section 4. Section 5, where we go through the actual recommendations that we've made. One other meeting that I failed to mention as part of our compilation efforts is just after the 2 beach vending public workshops we also had a third workshop that was really just a open forum to talk about anything beach related, not necessarily vending or any other aspects, is for general input of how the beach is managed. So we have our enforcement action, we have our complaint logs, we have the input from the public workshops, and all that goes together to come to this section 5 of what we think or what we recommend for the BCC to consider to change or revise to make the beaches a better place. So that chapter or section 5 starts on. You ready?
22 is your recommendations.
22. Okay. So here's the history of it. Over the last couple of years, we've touted the Beach Management Program on our public beaches. Storage of equipment to the noon. Bolton County has gone through a sort of roller coaster approach to this. We ban it for a while, and then there's a change in attitude about it. We allow it. It gets out of hand again, and our beach accesses and really just a lot of the toe of the dune ends up being a big storage area, not only for vendor equipment, but the visitor to the beach. Once they see people doing it, they think it's okay to do it. And really, the ordinance reads the vendor's allowed to do it. The leave no trace section kind of governs the public, general public, but if the vendor's allowed to do it, we find it hard to enforce against the casual visitor. The other thing is we can't always find them because they've stashed their equipment and they've gone north of 38 or some other open area, and we just don't see them. Our leave no trace crew doesn't pick it up because it's at toe of the dune, and that is technically not on the beach. Leave no trace says the beach, which is defined as the flat sandy portion between the toe of the dune and the water's edge. So anyway, storage equipment of toe of the dune is one item we brought up last year. 2260, paragraphs D8, that's the upland property authorization. In Walton County, when the ordinance was revised many years ago in association with the beach nursery program on the west end of the beach, this was inserted into it to give some control of what we're now, anything seaward of the ECL is Florida state land. It's somewhat changed the Gulfront property owners' literal rights, and so this was inserted into our municipal code to give them some control over what is state-owned property seaward of their property. So those are the ones we brought up in end of 2015 in preparation for 2016. As I said before, Board of County Commissioners decided not to make any changes to the ordinance last year, and agreed to look at it again this year and see if there's anything that needs to be done. Next up is our postseason beach vending workshops. This is the items that were discussed in that. A summary, and then we get to the recommendations. So the first one has to deal with what I call beach vendor management, section 2268 policy. The rest of that paragraph talks about Waldo County, best interest of the general public has the right to regulate commercial activity on the public lands of Waldo County. That's it in a nutshell, not verbatim. And so we would recommend that a public beach vendor management program be instituted. And there's a couple of variations of what that could be. On the simple side, it could be a simple land lease where the county sets stipulations on how the vending operations can be conducted on the public beach. We're talking about regional beach accesses now. And then that would be put out for a request for proposal for a land lease. And we would expect the vendors that are interested to put together a business model of what they think the beach could generate as far as revenue, and then include that cost into their business model and come up with a number they think is fair and would be the winning bid. So in that case, the county would take the highest bidder for that lease land for a certain period of time. Once again, the big component of that is that there would be rules and regulations or code of conduct of how that vendor could operate on that beach. One of the biggest ones is an attendant there full-time to service the guests as they come to the beach. There could be, a allowance of a certain amount of expected setups. We certainly include a clause of you have to pull up chairs when they're not being used anymore. It may contain a clause of a certain section of that beach or a certain section of that public beach has to be completely set aside for the general public. In other words, similar to what we have our vending zones now that restrict the vendor to a certain area and allow the general public to have an opportunity to get some choice beach area. Or it could be as complex as a request for services or a contract agreement where Walton County accepts the revenue for the people using the beach, and we pay an entity to provide that service of vending, of beach equipment vending. And so in that case, we would have some sort of mechanism set up where whoever collected the revenue would then submit it. There are some online or automated systems that can be used. We have a different mechanism of collecting that type of service and then paying for that type of service as well. Or it could be a combination of in between. So as we move through this, our typical progression through this approval process is here, TDC, Tourist Development Council level, and then the BCC. As we go through, we refine these and we try to, as we see it head in a certain direction. In other words, if we recognize that our committee would say, probably the land lease is the way to go, Brian. Right now, see how that works. We would be developing it in that direction as it moves forward. Neighborhood beach accesses also have some public beach associated with them. As you know, we have vendor zones on those. It's a little bit more complicated on those because of that upland property owner authorization capability, paragraph D8. So with this deal, we would ask for paragraph D8 to either go away and or we just don't do the leases, land leases, or service contracts on those public beaches. Because of that paragraph D8, there would be no way for a business person to develop a model if they could not fully understand how they would want to be able to vend on that piece of land. So in that case, we would resort back to still doing D8, but then going back to that D8 in its essence of if you're vending on that beach, then you have to have the upland properties authorization. That is kind of a hard thing for us to enforce. Currently, our resources they're better than they were, and they're going to get better than they are, but it's still, if you think about it, we have 150 vendor permits last year, 60 plus vendors, and I don't know how many sets are on the beach, but for our guys to go down and check everybody, to make sure they have all proper authorization, it's pretty cumbersome. And even keeping the database of that, where we require it the first of the year, because those tend to move around, as you get new people coming into town, they're renting the Gulfront property, they might not know, contact vendor XYZ who has the written authorization, they might contact another vendor out of the phone book. So it's just very problematic in those areas. So those areas would actually be able to go away. And then those could be segmented up into lots. In other words, certain areas of the beach would be one lot that a vendor would bid on for the land lease or the service contract. It's a little more detailed in my outline here, but that's the gist of it. Second one is 2260B1, that's the storage of vendor equipment at Toe of the Dune. We recommend to remove omitted verbiage that allows for delivery vendors to store equipment at Toe of the Dune. We think that it would benefit the public beach if all that equipment was removed at the end of the day. There's also some possible ideas on creating a community storage box so that all vendor equipment goes into a storage box that meets our standard 4x4x8 box, or possibly revision to a 4x4x12 to hold some stand-up paddle boards. They would be white, blend into the dune, and it would be a defined place instead of scattered on the toe of the dune. The next one, 2260D3, beach equipment setup standards. There's several areas in the code that have some ambiguous language. The biggest one is reasonable distance from the water's edge. Got to set your equipment up a reasonable distance from the water's edge. Well, what is a reasonable distance? Reasonable distance really ought to be so that nobody sets up in front of you. That's kind of what most people set up by today. That's why they have it set at the water's edge. So we would increase that to a defined distance. 15 feet is what we recommend. Next section of that is add verbiage to allow for a 15-foot clear corridor. As our beaches get more congested and our beaches get more critically eroded, this year in particular, there was beach setups all the way up to the toe of the dune. It doesn't allow for east-west travel from maintenance vehicles, code enforcement vehicles, law enforcement vehicles, state vehicles as you go on the beach. So we want to ask for that as well, 15-foot clear corridor. Change from verbiage referring to the public access aisles to more specific verbiage. Right now it says allow for access aisles to the water, and it would also, once that corridor is established, it stays clear. Because right now vendor A can come down, he leaves a big enough space, vendor B comes down, he plugs in the space. We get down there, we don't know if vendor A was there first, vendor B, so there's no enforcement action to be taken because we can't clearly define who didn't follow the rule. So it would be that, a 6-foot wide public access, once it's established, and as frequent as every fourth chair or umbrella setup, and once it's established, it stays there. We also have here to prohibit vending of tents greater than 6x6x6. The county has already taken that into consideration in their most recent adoption, so that would not really have to be considered in this. We set the 6x6x6 size so that it wouldn't limit families with young children, infants, toddlers, that bring down small pop-up tents. What we're trying to eliminate or prohibit is the large 8x8, 10x10, 12x12, and what we saw at the end of last year was the large boot-framed double tent with hammocks hanging in it. The next section, 2260D8 and 10, vendor authorization by open property owner and vendor zones on public beaches associated with neighborhood beach accesses. We would either remove or omit the verbiage that requires open property owner's written authorization for commercial vending, or discontinue the vendor zones on public beaches, or limit commercial vending on public beaches associated with MBAs by allowing door delivery of beach equipment only. When the code was first written, it's my understanding the intent for the delivery vendor was just that, to bring equipment to somebody's house, and then that person manage that equipment for the rent period, if it's a day, a week, a year, whatever. What is morphed into is delivery vendor brings equipment up, sets it up first thing in the morning, doesn't tear it down at the end of the afternoon. That contributes to a lot of the ghost setups. So that's an area we would ask for recommendation or revisions to that section. 2262 is our penalties, fees, and fines. We recommend changing the permit. Permit is $500 for your first, for your delivery permit, $500 for your first specific place permit, and then $50 for each subsequent specific place permit. We recommend that those go to $1,000 for the initial permits, and then any subsequent permit go to $250. Special event policies, 2259, paragraph A. We have petitioned the county administration for beach operations, beach code enforcement, to take over the special eventing permit application process. And the reason is that we have more intimate knowledge of the actual neighborhood beach accesses, available parking, restrictions, or their relationship to property on each side of it. And so we feel like, not necessarily we can do a better job, but we feel like that by taking over that application process, we can stop a lot of the non-compliant behavior before it ever starts. So we've got the initial nod to move that way, working with the current permit application people, the planning department, to make that transition. And then some other things we'd like to do with special events. Right now, not everybody that operates under special event permits is a permitted vendor. And a lot of the non-compliant behavior comes from we don't really understand the municipal code as it's written, because they're not required to come to a meeting, a pre-season meeting, mandatory meeting where these rules are explained, what's expected of it. So that recommendation is anybody that is doing business on Walton County public beaches is a permitted vendor and has to abide by the vending rules. So that's number 6 there, 2259, paragraph A. Also, we recommend that the special event permit be changed from $50 to $1,000. Many years ago, the special event was basically a beach wedding. There was a very small ceremony, a few chairs for the elderly family members, maybe an arbor, quick ceremony, small celebration, and it was over with. Now they've become very elaborate. They're not just weddings, they're pre-wedding events, rehearsal dinners, just pre-wedding parties, family reunions, just all kind of different get-togethers that special events or permits are issued for. And so they've really burdened definitely burdened the neighborhood beach accesses and are severely burdening the regional beach accesses. So we feel like that $50 is not much of a charge for a venue, and so we would ask that change to $1,000. 2259C2, the special event permit application. Right now, there's a couple things that trigger a special event permit. If you're going to do something that's not allowed by ordinance, you've got to have a special event permit. If you're going to have a wedding on a public beach access, special event. And if you're going to have more than 50 people, it has a special event permit. We ask that be changed to 30 people. Once again, we feel like it will help us to regulate the activities that are going on the beach, as opposed to just impromptu parties that really should require a special event permit. 2259C3, special event permit application. There are several things that are supposed to be included in that permit application that are just simply not being asked for. And we feel that by enforcing these already required items that we can stop a lot of this behavior or stop the large wedding at a small neighborhood beach access that will not accommodate it and will generate complaints by the adjacent property owners, both upland, and the ones on the beach. One of them is a detailed parking plan, a detailed equipment list and layout to include quantities of tables, chairs, lights, if you're going to have lights. We have some verbiage in the Chapter 5, which is wildlife lighting ordinance, that if you're going to have lights on the beach during turtle season, you have to have the FDEP permit. Currently, permit application, people are not asking for that. We would make sure that all the things that are already in place are required, are obtained before a permit can be issued. Another big area that affects, or the special events affect, are our turtle nests on Walton County beaches. Bonfires have verbiage in their section that says you have to be 200 feet away from a turtle nest. Special event permit section does not have that, but it does have it listed on the permit application. Well, it's not enforceable by us because we can only enforce what's in the ordinance, not what's on the application. So we would ask that that verbiage be added, and we have started what we call a interactive turtle nest map, and what it does is allows us to enter the information, detailed information about the turtle nest, and its precise location on the beach by GPS coordinates. And so as we're reviewing permits, we could then know for sure if a permitted or if an event is going to be too close to a nest, and therefore that permit would be or application would be denied, and we could stop the non-compliant behavior we have in association with turtle nests. It also gives us the opportunity, since most wedding special events are planned pretty far out in the future, 6 to 8 months, sometimes a year, that by letting the applicant know at the time that your event could possibly be affected by a future turtle nest, it might make them seek a different venue that's more appropriate for that wedding. We have some regional beach accesses that aren't big enough for a turtle nest and any kind of event, like Van Ness Butler is 90 feet wide, Cofield Heights is 100 feet wide. So adding some verbiage in there, and yes, ma'am?
Hey, I didn't know if you were going to have public comment later, but
We are.
there's so many questions I don't know where to begin, but, okay, now, you were talking about a vendor, and I don't know now what you're talking about, but a lot of people who rent on Gulf Trace Beach, for instance, they rent a home.
Yes, ma'am.
They come for the wedding, or they come for a reunion. Are you only talking about applying this to the public beach accesses where the county controls? Is this going to also be private property? How is that going to work?
Most of this is targeted for what's considered public beach.
Only the public beach access?
Right. The rules right now as they're written, the code regulations are different for public property versus private property, okay? If you're on private property, you're only required to have a special event permit if you want to do something that is not allowed by code, okay? Such as lights on the beach during turtle season, glass on the beach, which we would not allow glass on the beach anyway. If you're going to have more than 50 people, and if you have more than 100 people, there are some other triggers that cause some different things. You have to have law enforcement involvement, stuff like that.
But they can set up a big tent, as big as they want, stuff like that, if they're on private property, right? They can do it.
If they're less than the thresholds that trigger a special event permit, then they can do that. But if they're into the area that does do that. So right now, we don't have a code that regulates the size of the tent.
Okay, and so Are you talking about the vendors are going to have to pay the $1,000 to set someone's wedding up, or is the person who's setting up the wedding who wants to get married there going to pay? Who's paying the money?
Well, another part of the verbiage we'd like to change is that a person that wants to have a special event on public beach has to contract with a permitted vendor. So the first year, all the vendors come in and get their beach vending permits. And so since we've asked for all people that are doing, because the definition of a vendor is somebody that provides a service for a fee, a service or a commodity for a fee on the beach. And so
So if people want to come get married on a public beach access,
yes, ma'am.
they'll have to go through a vendor, and that vendor may do all these other things, I don't know, very complex, what you described. If that vendor has gotten the lease, or only the people who have that lease will be able to do it, or?
Yes, ma'am. In the case where we have a vendor management program, so a couple of these things are running parallel to each other, okay? The sections I was just going over was actually some verbiage changes to section 2259, which is the special event permit section. What I was going over previously was some revision recommendations to 2260, which is the beach vending section. But yes, if we had a beach vendor management program where a vendor, we did the land lease type of format, then that vendor would have exclusive rights to vend on that beach.
To set up the wedding.
Right, so if a person had a wedding at, say, Ed Walling, and vending company ABC had obtained the land lease or the service contract for that beach, then the person coming that was applying for a beach wedding and they wanted to do it at Ed Walling, we would say, okay, then part of our code says you have to use a permitted vendor, and on that particular beach, we have a vendor that holds the land lease. And if you want to do that, then you have to contract with this vendor. Now, I know not all vendors are set up to do special events. So, in that case, I would expect them to do like other businesses do and contract out, or subcontract out to a special event type or business, or a wedding event planner or
They're
something.
going to have to, because you're
Yes, ma'am.
talking about, mainly they're going to be setting up chairs for tourists, and they're not in the wedding business, but they're going
Yes,
to
ma'am.
have to. Okay.
In essence, what we'd like to do is manage the regional beach accesses similar in regards to vending, similar to the way a resort destination or resort community manages their portion of the beach that they control. And so, like in the case of, let's just use Seaside for example. If you want to have a wedding in Seaside, you have to use Seaside's wedding event planner.
Okay, if customary use goes in, you've got a whole strip of beaches.
Yes, ma'am. If customary use comes in, then we still own the public beaches, the regional beach accesses, so it would affect that. It does affect how things happen on other beaches that are currently what I call, not county-owned beaches.
Right, so I could go have a wedding there without going to a vendor.
Depending on who is the upland property owner and who has control of that beach. But if it's customary use, there's still a lot to be decided in the customary use. That's why they postponed the effective date, and they set up a committee to review the particulars of how that will be.
When you held all the workshops, did your vendors have a lot of input? Is a lot of this from what your vendors wanted?
Well, we had what I would say a fairly decent mix of vendors and general public that are concerned about the beach. And, we gathered some input.
Because this will have a tremendous impact on the vendors, is why I was asking how much impact they have, how much.
It'll have an impact on the vendors that are delivery vendors that service the public beaches.
Can I add on it? Chris,
Chris, let me let Sherry speak. She had her hand up just one time. We can get back to you.
Sherry, People's Great Big Catering. I get everything you're saying. I'm fine with paying a fee for a wedding, because I think your bride will pay that. We're in the wedding business, and that's pretty much all we do. We do not rent beach chairs, we do not do bonfires unless we're doing a special event, in which we get a special event permit. We get a special event permit whether we have 2 people or whether we have 200 people on the beach. But we get that because we're serving food, and we're required, because that's outside of the ordinance. And we normally put up lights, which we use LED lights, they're acrylic. We use silent generators, which are put at the toe of the dune. We follow all the rules. We get 250 feet from the turtleness, which I think it's only 200. I understand on some of the beaches, there are smaller areas, the dune, the tide, and the beach area. So, you know, on those beaches, I think you should say, okay, this particular access can only hold 50 or can only hold 75 or whatever that number is. We know Fort Panic can hold over 100. We know that Wallene can do that. Most all of them can, except for an inlet can, because you got actually 3 accesses there. And when we have quite a few people at inlet, we actually permit 2B and 2C or whatever we need so that we can work within those to be as neighborly friendly as we possibly can,
Right.
because we understand it. But now when you're talking about saying somebody has the beach, a vendor, and then we book a wedding at that beach, then now it's up to that vendor who holds the land lease to allow us to come in. I don't think that that's fair at all. I don't think that that makes any sense.
What do you think would be a better way to do that?
Well, I think the special event permit, just like it does now, needs to override everything. I mean, if you pay $1,000 or $500 or whatever you pay for that special event fee line, you know, you should be able to come out there, whoever, no matter who hands it. We're doing nighttime events. We're not affecting your daytime chair vendor.
Okay.
You know, our events happen in the evening, most all the time.
Well, at least could be, you know, time specific.
What is the typical hour, 90% of your business?
6 to 10 is our normal events.
5 to 10, get out there.
Get out to set up and everything.
Get out there at 4.
We have to have 2 hours to set up prior to event. So it would be a 4 to 10. And then we pull everything, we're usually out by 10:30. You know, it doesn't take long right now. And then another thing you need to think about. Do you realize how many people we service year after year after year, small families that call us for, because shrimp bowls and bonfires are a major part of our business.
Yes, ma'am.
I mean, we have people that we have been servicing for over 10 years, 2 or 3 times a year, over and over again, they come back. You're talking about 8 people. 8 people cannot pay $1,000 for us to pull a special event permit. You're going to have to look at those and say, okay, we need to go from 1 to 20. And then maybe, you know, I mean, you're going to have to define that a little better, because otherwise you're totally alienating your visitors that come year after year after year that really enjoy the beach and the services that we all provide. And
And that applies to actual locals that we do the same thing for 2 or 3 times a year.
yeah, I mean, like, we do stuff for CBHN once a year for their volunteers. We get a special event permit, but, I mean, we pay for that. And, you know, we do that. So what if we tell them now they've got to pay $1,000? I mean, this is something for their volunteers, you know? Just different things like that. We got to, you know.
So your recommendations is stagger the costs, vary among people, and
I think that would
set
work.
in a time frame, it'd be 6 hours, 7 hours for a permit, and that's what allows you access to that. You think that?
That's right. I think that would be perfectly reasonable. And I think that would work for everybody.
Yeah.
From $50 to $1,000.
That's a jump.
Right. And suddenly, might be a little much, might want to phase it in over.
Yeah, well, we did it based, you know, we didn't do it based on, you know, a transition pain. We did it based on, you know, other venues. If you're going to rent another venue to have a wedding, you're going to pay, you know, probably more than $1,000. And
I think a lot of that ordinance was written for the wedding.
I see what you're saying. If you're totally different. Small venue.
There's no issue with the wedding.
Yeah.
I believe that any bride that comes to us that wants to have a wedding, an actual wedding and reception. You got two things here. You've got a ceremony that maybe takes 20 to 30 minutes, an hour and a half tops to set up and write down and do the event. It's kind of tough to say, okay, well, that's going to cost you $1,000. Maybe that cost you $250. I don't know, I'm just throwing reasonable numbers out.
Yeah.
Now, if you have an event that has 100 people, and it's an actual reception, or ceremony reception, or even a rehearsal dinner with a lot of people, because you get those, people, that's a good welcome party. You bring them to the beach the next day, we sell weekend packages. We bring them to the beach on Friday, we put them in a venue on Saturday for their wedding, and then Sunday morning we do a brunch, and that's their weekend experience. So they've seen everything. They've had the beach, they've had, whether it's Eden Gardens, whether it's Monet, whether it's wherever it is, they've had that experience, and then the next morning they get the, grand poobah out the door. So you've got so many different variables, but I don't think a bride, I think we could easily, if you've got 75, 100 people, you could say there's $1,000 fee. Okay, we just charge them.
Yeah.
And we pull the permit, we service them, we handle everything within. There's nothing handled outside of us. Another thing, if there's food out there, you need to have somebody with food handler's license. You can't just have, it either has to be brought and serviced by a food handler, or if the food is serviced there, you have to, somewhere there has to be someone with a food handler's license involved when there's major food.
I'd like to back up for a second in light of this entire discussion. Just full disclosure, I am a beach vendor. And I sincerely do appreciate Mr. Bryan's efforts at coming to this and really trying to make the county better. What I want to understand and discuss it as a committee is how did we get to the point that we needed all these rules to come up with? Because when I analyzed your numbers over and over and over, based on the contacts that your staff had, based on the complaints that you guys had, based on your 3,827 contacts, 6.8% were beach vendor related. I don't see, as far as horses and dogs, that's 983 contacts, that's 25%. Glass was 8%, that's even more than beach vendors. We don't have any new laws coming in about glass. We don't have any new laws here proposed about horses and dogs. Leave no trace public was significantly more than leave no trace vendor. Right. So I understand what we're doing, and I know this is not brand new. This was proposed a few years ago. We had the Board of County Commissioners, which is the entire intent of this committee forming stuff, that then goes to the TDC committee, that then goes to the BCC. So we are essentially trying to form these rules to ultimately get to the BCC, give them the most knowledge possible to say, yes, this is good, no, this is bad. Okay? If the BCC is the ultimate intent, and we presented this to them last year, essentially the TDC did, they said, no, we don't want to make any changes. It was 95% the same as what's in here. There's a few odd things, some of them which I agree with and think are good. But they said, no, let's not do it. And they said 2015 was a good year. But 2016 rolls around. I was a vendor in 2015. I was a vendor in 2016. I appreciate any other vendors who has been in the business for those 2 years to voice to say that I feel personally that 2016, as far as obliging to the actual rules, we did significantly better. We're more informed of the rules. We had another year, the 50% rule in effect. We know that code enforcement doesn't play games. We don't want a $100 ticket for messing up. You go, if you work at a restaurant and you accidentally put mayonnaise on a sandwich you're not supposed to, you're just told, hey, make another sandwich. You're not told here's $100, $200, $500 fine. Nobody really intends to be a bad guy. There are a few bad apples in the bunch, don't get me wrong. I would love nothing more than to see them go away. But what's happening, I'm trying to understand how we get here. As a vendor, as a responsible vendor, I completely disagree with bidding the beaches out to a regional access. I feel like I'm an honest businessman. I'm not going to bid on a regional beach because it's not worth my time to have a guy sit at a beach at Bramble Grove where you might have 14 sets. Therefore, I'm not going to do any beach chairs, period. Therefore, the guy who lies and cheats and steals is going to try to get those contracts. He's paying the county the most money out of all, yet he's going to have a guy that is not qualified to do it and do a very, very poor job because he's trying to save money. I just don't understand how a government, very politely, I don't understand how a government organization is trying to make more and more and more and more rules to try to think it's going to solve an issue. And if we want to talk about an issue, I analyze these statistics as hard as I could, that these statistics don't show that beach vending is an issue. Now, we can have another conversation, and I completely agree. As Ms. Lisa said earlier, I do believe that there are other people that are not happy or satisfied with things that are not reported. I have no problem with that, but we can't base brand new rules that are going to affect lots of people, that ultimately are going to affect lots of tourists who spend millions of dollars down here off of 90 complaints. This is complaints that were logged in your system, 90 beach-related complaints. When we had, sure, someone can tell me how many millions of people came to the beach. We had 90 against us. Okay, of those 90, 10 of those were by another beach service. They just want to tell on another beach service. Majority of those don't, in your log, don't say who made the complaint. They're random complaints. So I want you to know I respect what the county is trying to do. I respect the direction we're going in, but we're here sitting as a committee and with public comment to form our best opinion, to then go to the TDC committee, to then go to the BCC, and we're only talking about something that was 6% of your contacts last year and was 90 complaints. Yet the most contacts and the most complaints, we don't have any new laws and rules about this.
Okay. Appreciate your thorough reading of it, and let me answer your questions. The horses and dogs, the problem we have there is purely a resource problem. There is no ambiguity to the code. People generally, if you look at the thing, they generally are, more than 50% they are compliant. Okay? What we need is more officers on the beach to be able to cover the beach and be proactive, or to focus on an area where we're receiving complaints from. So that's why there are no revisions to the horses and dogs section. Glass is the same thing. It's simply glass is not allowed on the beach. Okay, so there aren't really no other revisions you can make to it, right? And once again, it is a resource issue. It's not a ambiguity in the code or anything like that. It's simply not having enough people on the beach at any given time to catch the glass. The other thing is glass is fairly hard to catch. Our trucks are big. There's actually, have known that there are social media campaigns to let people know where we are. So it's very easy to hide. That's why there's no revisions to the glass. As I stated the first of the meeting, the skewed public leave no trace is due to the ordinance revision that was adopted in midsummer for signs, ropes, and fences. We received an inordinate amount of complaints against that in the period right before it was adopted. It was known that it was going to be considered, and in an effort for people to make a case, they wanted to make as many complaints as they could. During the grace period, they complained, and then even after the grace period, people complained because they wanted the fences and posts to come down. So that's why that was skewed. The beach vending ordinance revisions, and especially the ordinance revision recommendations, are because of the ambiguity in the code and because of the exploitation of the beach by the beach vendors.
I've got the issue with that.
Okay.
That infers a certain amount of, when you say the exploitation, that infers that you have clairvoyance into our motives. And let me just say this, as I walk on.
I disagree that it means I have clairvoyance. What it does mean is that I have an intimate knowledge.
It's an inference of exploitation, and it's hard for me not to take that personal.
I agree with you, but it's also equally hard for me to say that, or to accept that you think I'm clairvoyant, because I'm not.
Oh, I agree with that. I agree with that.
What I do have is intimate knowledge of what goes on the beach.
Well, I think we both do. Let me say, I've been a Walton County resident for a long time.
Okay.
I just want to say, there's this, And first of all, I appreciate you trying to put this enigma together. It's a complex problem.
It is, yeah.
But there's this sense when you speak that the public, the people, Walton County residents and Walton County visitors don't want beach vending, and that's wrong. They do. They want beach vending.
Chris, I'm sorry that you have developed that attitude. I am by no means against beach vending. In fact, since I started here, I have advocated systems or policies that the beach vendors could adopt that would make their presence on the beach a very welcome, not that it's not welcome. I mean, I know, down the business y'all do, obviously somebody wants your service. And keep in mind.
That's right.
Keep in mind that a lot of the stuff we're talking about changing is only concerned with the public beach areas.
Right. Okay.
Specific place vendors, we have very little interaction with, very little non-compliant behavior, and that is, we continue on just like it is.
Well, and that's one of the, I want to speak as a Walton County resident, not just as a beach vendor. Okay. It's like, from, what she was saying, from the, like going from $50 to $1,000.
Yes, sir.
It will, if you look at the consequences of that, it will eliminate any small weddings. We have to look at the total consequences. Some of the recommendations that you've made will kill beach delivery businesses. Now, some of the consequences for that, it's like taking a reusable water bottle and replacing it with mountains of plastic bottles from Walmart and from Publix. Because the beach delivery service is one of the best examples of produce and reuse that we have in Walton County. When you eliminate beach vending delivery, if you do that, the people will still be there. They'll just be bringing Walmart stuff to the beach. And so, the same thing, if you redirect everyone to regional beach accesses, you put automobiles on 38 instead of people using their neighborhood, instead of people using pedestrian traffic on the beach, they're going to be in their automobiles or on their golf carts. So some of these things that you're proposing are not just bad for the beach vendors, they're bad for the public, they're bad for Walton County as far as when we think about the green aspect of Walton County. So I just want to say and Brian's worked a long time on it, and I know some of this work was done by his predecessor, Jim, who I consider my friend. But sometimes we also have intimate knowledge of the beach and how it works. And if you implement some of these policies, it will increase non-reusable beach equipment on the beach. It will increase automobile traffic on 38, which I think we can all agree is about both the negative effects.
Yeah. Well, you're right. We're actively trying to reduce congestion on 38 and lack of parking issues that we have here. But Chris, I sort of see your point. But the land lease or the service contract for regional beach accesses doesn't eliminate vending. Vending still exists. It just becomes a regulated entity where we're able to make sure that the experience the visitor is coming to enjoy happens. Because right now there are some areas that they're not enjoying, and unfortunately a lot of those are associated with commercial vending practices. One instance that was by far and large our largest complaint is ghost sets. And I understand why there are ghost sets on public beaches. And that's because of the practice of the commercial vendor. Philip explained it perfectly. He can't afford to have a person sitting down there all day. So he puts the chairs out. Yes, ma'am, just a second. He puts the chairs out in the morning, and then in the afternoon his guy collects them. It's an efficient model to work. It's very efficient for the vendor. It creates a acceptable bottom line for them. But for the casual beachgoer that doesn't want to rent equipment or can't afford to rent equipment, it is not working because he is 2 or 3 chairs deep and he's behind empty chairs.
Well, that's not exactly true, because if you know how it works, beach vendors can't set up until after the turtle person's come
That's
through,
correct.
but the general public can. So oftentimes people.
The general public can't. Unfortunately, it's another resource problem, is we can't be, they're.
Well, let's say they're not legal, but they do.
Right.
And
And why do they do that?
why do they do that?
Mhm.
Because they want the best spot.
Because what?
They want the best spot. They're serving self-interest. They want the best spot.
Meaning they want to be the vendor.
They want the, and any other person they're competing with, the vendor. But see, now you keep saying the vendor, but what you really should say, if we're accurate, you should say the vendor's client, which is all of our clients. Okay? Because when Philip sets up a chair, or I set up a chair, I don't do a lot of these delivery, but I do some. We set up our clients, we set up your clients.
I agree.
And so some of these.
How do we solve the issue of the client not using your product every day? And the idea that you have to set it up every day.
Well, Brian, everybody goes to the beach,
Right.
and sets up equipment and then leaves for lunch. People go to the beach and stake out the best possible spot at Van Ness Butler, and then leave and come back and have breakfast and go get coffee at Alameda.
Right.
Everyone does that. If you told someone that they'd have to take their chairs home when they go home for lunch,
No, well,
they wouldn't do it.
No.
It doesn't work.
We don't mean that.
It's not logistic.
Yeah, we don't mean that.
It's not a
Generally-
logistical reality.
I agree. But the average person that does come down to the beach is north of 38. Unfortunately, right now, they send Dad down early in the morning, set up camp, and then they'll leave him down there all day to reserve a spot. If we can get to a situation where you don't have to reserve a spot, but you can still get accommodating beach area. When I say accommodating, right now, I think the mentality on Walton County is I gotta be waterfront. I look at other beaches as I'm, trying to, make positive change here. I look at other beaches, how they're managed and all that. Okaloosa, clearly, they don't mind setting up 5, 6, 8 tiers of umbrellas and people mingling in and out of them. Okay, but over here, we don't seem to want to do that. So that forces everybody to, I call it the race to the water's edge in the morning. So the vendor zones show that if you did restrict or allow the area of beach to not be set up, basically reserving or proxy seating by vendors, that the general public didn't race down there to set up in that area.
You said they did not.
They did not race. When they know that there's a freeze, a vendor.
It could be that the demand for vendor service is larger than you assume it is. And that the vendor zones are in fact too small for the public's benefit. So you've got a non-vendor zone that's not overcrowded, but that doesn't mean that you're doing the right thing. What it might mean is you've not allotted enough land to the clients, to our clients, to Walton County residents and Walton County guests that want to use the beach vendor. Do you see what I'm saying? The problem may be is you've not allotted enough land for people who want that service. We don't have low-end visitors here.
Right.
It's not just people with small children, it's not just handicapped people, it's not just the elderly that want beach service. People, it adds something to this community.
I agree.
It adds value to real homes that are not Gulf front. That's the preponderance of Walton County homeowners, I think. And property owners.
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, yeah, okay, thank you. Right, the basis of business is supply and demand. And I also think it's an insult to say exploitation. I think you ought to say our beach vendors, our small businesses accommodate our tourist industry. They accommodate, they don't exploit tourists, they accommodate. But I also...
Let me make a comment on that. Exploitation, I'll probably use it in a broad stroke, and I didn't mean it on that every vendor does that. But there is a pattern of delivery vendors on public beaches that are using a public resource to their benefit without regard to other users of the beach.
Okay. So, And I'm new to all this, but I wanted to ask, so based on what I've heard and seen today in this document that you've got, these new regulations, which new rules and regulations always require more enforcement. But I don't know, if you would define the problem, that what is the problem? And the second question is, how in the world do you leap from $50 to $1,000? What are you trying to gain by going to $1,000? What are you trying to fix?
Okay, let me address your questions. The case for recommendations is contained in this activity report. Okay, and as I explained before, this activity report is a complete picture of what our enforcement action is. And then we have public workshops to take in public input. Okay?
But 6% of it was vendors, and so you've got all of these rules and regulations going, which are going to make more difficult enforcement.
Well, no, actually, our reasoning behind some of this verbiage change is to remove ambiguity so that it makes it easier to enforce. If the rules are black and white, then it's easier for a person that has to abide by the rules to understand. It's also easier for the enforcement component to take the action that is required if they're not compliant. Right now, we have a lot of ambiguity in it that, which is another reason why when I use the word exploitation, is that the ambiguity and the loopholes are easily figured out. And, here's one, for instance. Delivery vendors are allowed to store the total dune provided the equipment is to be rented the next day. What percentage of equipment do you believe is rented the next day? 100%. And the reason is because they're rented by the week or they're rented by annual contract. So, the question that I have posed to vendors is there a way that we can figure out when your rentee is not going to use that chair for that week?
And I think a good solution to that would be Google Docs. I think you could require these vendors to upload their schedule for the next day. It's not hard at all. And then the code enforcement officers could see that. They could say, okay, there's a COP service set here at Wallene, but I don't see anything on his sheet that says that's rented. That's in violation.
But how many sets do we have out there? I mean, we also don't have resources to do that. This is something that I have asked the industry to address. And I usually end it with, guys, you need to self-regulate in order to not have more regulation put on you. And so,
I think that would be great. But eventually, the code enforcement could see our reservations.
But we have 5 code enforcement guys and a part-time code enforcement administrator right now. But we don't have time to review all that. I mean,
well, it'd be easier for them. I mean, it'd be easier that when they show up at Van Ness, they could simply.
It requires y'all to put in accurate input.
Well, it would.
But if this is a matter of enforcement, which is what I think I'm hearing, okay? Back to your comment about the dogs and the horses and all these things.
Yes.
We're drastically increasing the code enforcement staff for next year, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. So if we feel that these issues are because we can't be in all these places, we can't enforce all these things, granted 6% again of these contacts were about us, then if we have double the force essentially, don't you think that we'll be able to enforce these current rules we have that are not actually being followed right now? Just when you talk about the regional beach, bidding goes out to a certain person, and from what I understand, and correct me if I'm wrong, the main reason doing that is to be able to hold someone accountable and enforce them better. If we actually had the right number of code enforcement officers, which it sounds like we're doing, which is a great thing, I have no problem with that, why do we need all this? Well, can't we hold ourselves accountable for these rules? And then on top of what you just said a minute ago too, saying you wish vendors would actually hold themselves accountable and that. So everyone knows we are forming as vendors an association as we speak. I'm new to the game here, and I'm trying to round everyone up to do this. We're in the process of forming that under a third-party organization, and what we would like to do is to be able to present to this committee, to the TDC committee, according to Mr. Ryan's report and everything, that really is an issue that we do believe some things need to absolutely change. Feet from the water, no tents, things of this nature. And there's other things that we need to compromise on that is important to the public. But what we would like to do as vendors is to take this input and we propose self-regulated, hold each other accountable, like you're saying, what we think. And to propose that, as opposed to, I don't know the motive, I don't know the reason why all this was created a few years ago. This was not created yesterday based on the problems we had this past season. This was created before 2015, in which the county commissioner said 2015 was a great year. So we're still trying to push the same old rules that we feel like is a good thing, and we as vendors are trying to be proactive. We're forming an association to come up with rules that we feel are suitable to the public and to the county, but we're still kind of being told, now let's push this through, and with all due respect, I don't know who came up with this, you and a few staff members, and that's fine, but as Chris Webb mentioned, I think that we have a very detailed knowledge of what goes on the beach every single day, that we would like to address these things, and we would like to present that, and we sincerely would like to have the opportunity to, as opposed to something that one or two people came up with that they think is going to be better, that we force this through to the next
I
level.
take exception to that last statement. In March, I asked you as a committee member to bring forth recommendations to the ordinance that would be viable. I have yet received anything from you, and very few from any other.
And that was before I knew that this was going to be back on the table.
Well, you said you knew about it last year.
Yes, I did, and that was when the county commissioners came back to you and said, we had a great year, we need to
No,
take
they didn't
this.
say that a great year. They said we had less of a chaotic year than the year before. We didn't receive as many complaints. So therefore, Brian, I appreciate your efforts this year. Bring them back to us early at the end of the season for further consideration. That's what it said.
Yes, sir. And that is why we didn't do anything, because I didn't think personally after they said, when they ruled on what they did, that it wasn't going to be wrong again. Now that it is.
So when they said that, Brian, appreciate your efforts this year, bring them back to us, because one of the biggest things is they said that it was too late in the year to make any revisions that would affect small businessman. That was part, I'd say the two biggest factors were, Brian didn't receive as many complaints. We think the revisions we made the previous year have helped. And it's kind of late in the time year or the year to do this. Get them back to us early for consideration next year. So you took that as they weren't going to do anything this year?
I didn't think they were. So now that it's brought up again, and
that's
it didn't go through the
calculation on your part.
And it didn't go through the TDC committee, okay? So they pushed it back to this committee, which is what they said it should have done from the get-go. So now we're here, and now I'm bringing to the table that we are forming an association and that we do want to present.
But it did go through this committee. It did go through this committee as a request for review of the current code, Chapter 22.
And in my personal opinion, I thought the current code was fine the way it was.
And I understand why you didn't submit anything. Yes, ma'am.
First of all, I'm not a beach vendor, so I just want to make a couple of observations. One is because of the way the beach vending rules have been set up this year, you had a lot less complaints because people knew that 50% was devoted to vendors. And even if the chairs and all sat there empty, they were not in violation of that 50% rule. So just recognize that prevented a lot of complaints about those sets because of the way that it was handled last year. That said, it seems to me that the number one biggest problem that vendors, if they want to self-regulate, should try to solve is this whole race to the beach thing. If perhaps you all...
Race to the beach.
Race to the water where everybody's trying to get to the front seats first. One of the things, again, I'm not a beach vendor, so I don't really understand why this isn't workable, but I know people like to have everything set up for them, and, all they have to do is look down there and plop down in their chairs. I get that. But is it possible that perhaps you all could take your vendor setup for what you think? Okay, let's say I'm running 2 umbrellas and 4 chairs. So you take your vendor setup for Lisa, and you have it designated that it is put at the toe of the dune. And when Lisa gets there at 11 o'clock in the morning instead of 7:30 in the morning, I am responsible for moving my umbrella and chairs to the next available spot. What has happened here is a snowball effect. And people blame the vendors, not because you all are doing anything that wrong. You're trying to run a business and you're trying to figure out a way to do it with very limited people in a lot of different places. But what's happened is because you're going in first thing and you're setting up all these chairs and umbrellas. Well, then the next thing that happens is everybody else out here that wants to take their own, they start rushing to the beach so they can set theirs up too, and then they leave and go away too. So there's all this stuff on the beach already, and there's nobody even down there yet. And then, of course, yet, if you happen to put it in front of private folks, whether those are condominiums or individual homeowners or whatever, all of a sudden those folks are going, oh my gosh, I can't even sit on the beach in front of my house because there's this and that and that. So then they're out there even before the turtle people are finished. So we collectively have created a snowball effect where all we've got out there now is people reserving sections of beach, prime sections of beach, and sometimes there's nobody in those chairs. Other times there's people in those chairs for 2, 3, 4 hours, but the rest of the time that stuff's sitting out there. And it may be there from 7:30 in the morning till 6 o'clock at night and occupy 20-25% of the time. If you all can figure out a way to fix your part of that, I think a lot of the rest of it will fix on its own because nobody I know is really dying to get out there and put out all this stuff at 7:30 in the morning, but they feel compelled to do it to beat the vendors. Because you guys are willing to do it. So that's one thing. And the other thing I want to comment on, Brian, and I apologize if I'm out of turn on this one, but if you take away the upland owner's right to say you can't vend on my property and make money on my property. Now, if you're only talking about the public beaches.
I'm talking about public beach, Seaward of private property.
Okay, then we're totally sure they are public beaches because as we all know, we've had some issues over those things in the past. I do see the point where it's hard to say, you know, these are public, and there's one that was specified in here, and I'm not familiar with it, but Walton Dunes. I trust that as a purely public beach area.
That is considered a neighborhood beach access right now. It's a 2.6 acre piece of land we own that's vacant.
And they have never had beach renourishment.
Never had beach renourishment.
And so what is being proposed here is that, are those private homes, are they condos, or?
There's nothing landward of this property.
Okay, is it a neighborhood access or regional?
It's a neighborhood beach access because it doesn't have facilities. But you know, so that's why I call it neighborhood beach access. It's completely unimproved.
Well, you know, I have mixed emotions on that part then. I mean, I think you're really going to have a problem if you take away the upland owner approval in the part that's being renourished.
That's why I have that as a 3-part recommendation.
Yeah.
As a or.
Because those people, you know, the people that they got renourished, they were promised that. That's been said in meetings.
Yes, sir, I agree.
I think that one is like a showstopper.
I understand, and like I say, I'm not connected, you know, financially, emotionally, or anything to that particular thing. I'm connected to it in a code enforcement efficiency relationship. In that vendor zones, out of the 22 vendor zones we have on neighborhood beach accesses, 8 of them moved last year. 2 of them were completely omitted. And so the reason why I asked continually that be addressed, and it can be segmented into the area that has an erosion control line and the area that does not have since I know it was made as a promise. But it's just not efficient for the vendor because they don't know on any given day if that vendor zone is actually going to be intact in that location because it's subject to move at any given time by the opinion or by the request of the property owner. And you certainly couldn't do a RFP for land lease or contracted services because you don't know if that's going to exist. And I would assume, each year when we started with 50% zones on the neighborhood beach access area, public beach associated neighborhood beach access, they have, from the start, moved around a lot or been omitted. I think we started out with 28, we have 22 now, that's 2 years, so we had 6 omitted in 2 years. The first year we had about 14 of them move, last year we had 8 of them move. So they're reaching a stabilization point, but with the latest stuff that's happened with Walton County decisions on customary use, I predict that in the interim of when it goes into effect and a possible litigation period, that there'll be more people exercising their right to say yea or nay to vending. And another thing that we really did not anticipate with that paragraph D8 in the vending zones at neighborhood beach accesses is that some people want vending in front of their house, but they don't have the vendor zone. And that really compromises the vendor. So that's why, I just want something done with D8 so that we can remove the inefficiency of it. And if it's as simple as no vendor zones, and we go back to the pure form of it, which is if you're going to vend on public beach, sea, or private property, you got to have that person's written permission. And it's got to be on the file with us.
And one last thing I just want to mention, and this sort of goes to something Philip said, is it would be terrific if, I know the staff does a good job of trying to think through things, accommodate everybody, and that, of course, is impossible. But I would love to see these committees, particularly this one, because it's really the only one I'm involved with at this point. But I'd love to see the committees be brought in on this at the very beginning, because that's why we have this collection of, are you going to fuss at me, Brian?
I look at the meeting minutes. In March, I asked everybody to provide input.
But did you notice to just send it in via email?
That's exactly what, no, I asked you to read this. I asked you to read this.
I did that.
And I asked you to go out and visit all these beach accesses to become aware of them.
And as you know, I have sent you some things, and I've certainly talked to you about things, but I
So it's
just...
very aggravating to me when I'm sitting here in a meeting and we've had months of requests for information. We've had public meetings. Everybody that deals with me knows that they can call me or send me an email at any time with input.
Okay, you're right. Wait,
and now they're saying, whoa, Brian, stall on this.
No. I'm not saying that nobody's had an opportunity to have a singular ability to come, but we don't have any, we're only allowed to talk to each other when we're in a meeting like this.
Right.
And if we only have a meeting every other month, and of course, as we all know, there's sometimes everybody can't make every meeting that occurs every other month, we never really have a chance to have a discussion. You're right, we can send in things via email,
Right, and that's
or
why-
we can talk to you,
That's why I started in March.
or we can talk to Stacy,
Right.
but we...
That's why I started.
Not once can I
Yeah.
say to Philip, help me understand, Philip.
But that's why I started this process in March. And with expectations of being able to discuss it as a committee in May, but we received little or no input from anybody on this committee about it. Unfortunately, in June, our meeting was canceled due to some outside influences. And then, September meeting was the next one?
July and September.
Yeah, July and September.
Okay, well, I'll understand better than what you want in the future, because I did not understand, I knew you wanted to think about it. You wanted us to think about it, and you wanted us to come, I didn't mark this up for fun. I just didn't realize that the idea was we could only really give input via email or via a one-on-one discussion, and then it would somehow get compiled without us being able to interact with each other in a meeting setting where, I might say, hey, I think we should consider these things. And then Philip says, okay, Lisa, I get your point, but what about this? And then Maurice says, well, from another perspective, I think we should consider these where we can have some interaction, because that's the only way we get to interact. We can't even reply all on emails. And by the way, my husband made a spectacular suggestion to me the other day in hopes it might help committees work more effectively, that I'd like for you all to consider. He said, why don't the powers that be, whoever, I don't know if that's BCC or somebody, look at the possibility of an email that is a publicly available for people to view email exchanges so that we can actually email and have some dialogue with each other outside of a meeting, but it would be totally
No, you're
viewable.
breaking the sunshine law.
Breaking sunshine.
No, not if it's totally available.
If it's public, it is.
If y'all are talking about
Now,
business,
the reason that's illegal is because you cannot do that because you're expressing your opinion
Yeah.
on something, so it's against the
No.
sunshine law.
So it's different than us expressing
Yes.
an opinion here,
Yes,
even if
because
everybody.
it's a public forum.
Yeah, but, no, I mean, we can't talk about it amongst ourselves, but we can talk about it in a public
no, he told
forum.
y'all on Facebook.
No.
What she's referring to is basically a virtual meeting.
I don't
Yeah.
understand.
Yeah.
You do, but you have to post it for the public, you can't just have it open.
Yes, it would be.
You can't do that, you have to set a specific.
It's a question for our legal department. We'll post it.
Well, okay, so maybe what if it's a public website that we can communicate certain things? And I'm not advocating to get in there and start espousing all kinds of opinions as much as, just like we do here. I mean, I'm not going to stand here in front of all these people and say something ridiculous because, I'd like for them to think I'm a reasonably thoughtful person. But, there's just, there's no way for us to interact on these kinds of topics except in a meeting right now.
Right.
And if we spend most of the time just reviewing what's already been determined, or, I'm not saying you're not accepting input, but it's just, it doesn't give us the same latitude to have interactive discussion and maybe come to some good solutions.
I understand your question. I'll pose it to Lee to see what is available, what is precedent. And we'll report back via email distribution. Okay.
Ron, I just want to say something like we said, submit input to you, something that comes up that you've mentioned that I didn't think about with the special events, jumping, the cost up so high. I understand it. I was thinking of a large venue, but I didn't take into account, I know when I was thinking of it, as small venues of 15 to 20, so I think there's probably something on section B there, 2259. I'd like to see us do something, I don't have an idea as far as the exact numbers, but something we can stagger the cost, whether it's be
I think a tier system.
tier system, exactly. We stagger that off, where it's 15 to 20 people, it's this amount, if it's over 50, it's this amount. But something, I hate to have for the venues that put on a small, intimate gathering,
Yeah, and I'm
if they're having to pay $1,000. So I think that's a good question. It sounds like I like your system of how you go, you're very knowledgeable for me to learn about how you set up for the weddings and the time, but I think that would be very cost prohibitive.
And, I want to ask one question. At one time, the fire department was going to do business licenses, okay?
Yes.
Now, I don't know what happened to that, and Bonnie, correct me if I'm wrong, but the business association, small business association was behind that. If the fire department was doing it, because then it becomes safety regulations.
No, I can speak on that, because I'm on the fire board. The reason we're doing that is because we had a lot of businesses that came on board, and when we went to go by and do inspections of the businesses, we had no knowledge, because there was no business license. So the guys would come around for their inspections, and this used to be, I'll just say, a restaurant, and then it got changed into a florist, and they had no knowledge of the business transaction. So that was the reason that we had put forth that with a small fee of $50 for the business license, to be able to keep track of that.
Well, and that's another way for accountability. It's all about accountability, and I don't think, Philip, I think all of us agree on that. And a business license is not a a big thing, and most counties do require it. So, I mean, that may be another just form of accountability that you can put in place. Because Brian, really, if you take one piece of each, okay, Fort Henry, we use it for example, and you give that to one vendor, that's not fair. You've got to figure out another way to do that. And it's just not fair, it's not right, it's not just, it's none of those things.
I consider what we could, once again, the details of the beach vendor management plan would be something that would be worked out, through the committee if the county decides to go that route. And so I understand that, so we could say that the beach equipment, vending lease is, from 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. And after that, the space is available for special
Well, that's right, but
events.
I'm still, and yes, 100%, because I think that should be that way, because it only makes perfect sense, because we're not invading on anybody, but if I'm going to vendors, we're not vendors, again, we do bonfires, we do chairs, but only in conjunction with our food services, okay, so, and honestly, if people call us for bonfires only, we do refer them to Rent Your Here, to Merch, to whoever, it happens to be. But I don't think it's fair to say, okay, we got Fort Panic, and only whoever the highest bidder is can have it. Because
Kind of creates a monopoly on that.
absolutely. It's like the special event permits allowing people to get them without some sort of something, because they can say, oh, okay, well, we're going to buy a special event permit for every single beach, for every single Saturday, for every, year on out. And then when we book a wedding, and we do, our procedure is this: we book the wedding, we tell them we have to make sure the accesses are available, we immediately get our special event permit, we immediately get our bonfire permit, and then we immediately, the transaction is taking place. And now we know what we're going to do. We understand about the terminalness, we work with that because you have to. It's just the way it is, You can cut your numbers, again, like I said, at different accesses, you look at the numbers and see what can it even accommodate. We know that some of them are 12 foot wide. Well, the ones 12 foot wide, you might do a ceremony only and get the heck out of there, but that's about all you're going to do in there. You're not going to do a lot unless you have a small family of 8 or 10 people. Then it works fine.
Right.
So you just have to kind of look through all that. I'm happy to provide anything that we have. And I've
I
told
want to say, as we, develop take over the special event permitting application process, we're developing the physical parameters of each beach access so that we already have very decent knowledge of it because we deal with them every day, but as this, we would set, the parameters that it can be used as. The other biggest complaint we get, it's not contained in here, is the quality of life that we, the TDC, have created for the people that live here. And everybody's aware of it. And so, let's use Ray's Multi-Mountain, okay? 10 feet wide. There's no parking available there. The beach access starts in between two houses. There's private property on each side of it. All right, there shouldn't be allowed to have a wedding there with 40 people. There is no viable parking plan for that.
Well, that's correct. We do use that for ceremonies only, but we shuttle in and we shuttle out. That's what we do.
But even
We provide highway service at the venue.
But even the shuttling causes problems. We got a complaint, I can complain about a shuttle bus parked and blocking a guy's car.
Well, you don't want to put a bus out there.
So what do you do? So what do you do?
Well, we don't use buses, we use golf carts or, because it's a better experience.
But what I'm saying is, it's the same thing. I mean, it's just like, what we have now is we're putting things in places that simply cannot accommodate them. I mean, it'd be no different than if you were trying to use a private entity's piece of property. If it doesn't fit, you can't continue to do it and just, turn your head to the adverse problems that it's creating.
No, I agree.
That's what
I
we're
agree
doing
with
right now.
that. Well, you take back to Ray's, okay? So you're saying raise back basically to accommodate under 25 people? Is that, in your opinion? 17 feet.
I'll be honest with you, I'm almost to the point where Richmond Mountain Mountain is not a good place
Well,
for
then allow
beach.
two permits in Wright. You got the east end and you got the west end. Simple, easy,
I can see that.
then you're done with raise and you move on.
I can see that.
So, you know, I don't know how you're gonna tell your local people they can't. Well, I mean, bonfires, for example, if you've got somebody coming in, your local people can go get a bonfire permit, correct?
Yeah.
Not if there's 30 people though, right?
No,
We're gonna get
it's like-
some-
Once again, well, it's 50 right now, once again, there, you know, we can't continue to shoehorn people into places that they don't fit.
Well, what I'm saying is, okay, so you're just saying don't just eliminate that access for bonfires.
I'm saying that under the program we got now, Southbound Fire District, bonfire permittee, application processor, they've already started doing this.
Yes.
Limiting number of bonfires, they've actually started doing by number of people.
And that's another thing, like Van Ness. Now, this, for the vendor's sake, you know what we do right now? And I know this makes 0 cents. Van Ness allows one bonfire or two maybe? I think, is it two? And at one point it was one? Okay. So us, we get special event permit.
Right.
Okay, now we've paid $1,000 for this because we've got to let it. All right. So we go down there, right now, or now we're paying 50. But anyway, we go down there, we set up, our special event can be here in the middle or on one side of the, but then we have to put a bonfire over there in the vendor section.
Okay.
Which, I mean, we make it work and it's not a problem, but out of fairness to the vendor or to your other person that just wants to come down and have a bonfire, you would think that under that special event permit, you could keep it contained in one location, you know, without having to work our way. We're using more space, I guess is what.
Right.
Because of the way it's set up. But I mean, we make it work and we will make it work. You know, it just needs to be fair and right and
Yes,
just.
I would think that a change that could be made, administrative change under the, what we'll call, say, evening, nighttime use of public accesses, is that if the vendor zone doesn't apply at that time. Okay, so.
It used to not. It used to.
It used to not, but, you know, like I say, we unfortunately have to be black and white, and if the code says vendors are allowed to use this section of that public beach access, and that's what they have to use. But I would be very considering of a change to that says after 5 p.m. the vendor zones don't apply to the nighttime or
Well, then it's fair
evening.
for everybody. It's fair for the.
Well, once again, you know, the idea of these revisions is to regulate the amount of activity that's going on so that it becomes manageable. And if you look through all these revision change recommendations, you'll see that standard theme. And you know, unfortunate word of the use of the exploitation, when, you know, maybe it's just taking advantage of current rules and regulations is a more proper term. Okay.
I'll go with the fee schedule.
Well, the only thing I want to say is our meetings are supposed to run, you know, for an hour and a half. We're going to go approach 11 o'clock. There's a lot more to discuss. So we'll take a few more questions, and then we're going to make a decision as a committee. Do we want to move forward with these recommendations or not?
And we have another meeting.
We have another scheduled meeting.
But I mean, do we have to wait 2 months?
We can meet again in a month if y'all would like to. I'm up for it. This is what I want you to understand, and I want everybody to reflect on, you know, is my decision-making process good for all of Walton County, or is it good for me in particular? Be a local visitor to the beach, a out-of-state visitor, or a person that makes my living off the beach. With the understanding last year that this got pushed back into a time period that then became recognized as too late to making any changes. Recognize as we vote here in a few minutes what the lane is going to do.
okay? By pushing this back, if we don't meet in a month, whichever way we do, we're going to be hard pressed to get it back before the TDC in December.
TDC meets on the 6th.
Right, and then, of course, everything will shut down for BCC until after January, so we'll be able to get possibly back on the January meeting, which is, I don't know, the 10th, 11th, 12th. And then is there enough time to make any, once again, we back ourselves into a corner. So that's what I ask everybody to reflect on. So, do you have a question?
No,
Comment?
I have a comment. I just like to say, I appreciate you guys working on this. This is first world problems, and we're lucky. And I remember 2010 when that oil was drifting this way. We were all really scared. So we've got a lot of people that want to go to our beach, and we're trying to manage it. It's a good problem. So it's.
Is it possible to maybe have another meeting in just a week or so? Is it like a continuation of this, or is anybody?
Do we have to notice it?
Yeah, you have to public notice it 10 days.
But
And then we're gonna be right at Thanksgiving.
if we public noticed it right away, that we could do maybe November?
You gotta check the room, I don't know, I can't tell you anything, a lot of possibilities.
I mean, if nothing else, we could now that I understand a little bit better what you were looking for, we could send, because for instance, I think the idea of graduated permitting based on the size of parties, that's an idea. When I came in here, I had a few things that I was kind of like, yes, no. After hearing some of what Philip has said and Chris, I mean, if, not that I think that self-regulating is always workable, folks, I mean, I won't lie to you on that, but I think maybe they understand a little better what some of the rest of us might perceive as issues than do you before you walked in, and I know I certainly understand Sherry's point a lot better. I understand the whole thing of $1,000 going from $50 to $1,000. Now, I'm not saying there's no application for that, because maybe there is. If somebody did do the land lease, as an example, if there's, let's say you pick a location or two that you did that, and then the others you didn't. Well, maybe $1,000 isn't unreasonable then, because you've got one vendor getting to do everything at one location. But those are the kind of things I didn't know just by me looking at this. I read every bit. Stacy can tell you the very first day it came, I'm shooting questions back to her about where's this, where's that, what's this about? And so I think we can offer something. I just think we need more time to interact with each other.
And I think that's the intent of this entire committee, is hearing what Ms. Lisa's saying and us as vendors trying to come to a medium, but we need to have a chance to do that. I sincerely would like to have a vendor association presentation of what we think and what we think is good rules, and have this committee say, okay, let's go through this line by line. The way I think it should work is line 14. Do we all agree that's not going to work? That's not going to work. Scratch it. Okay, line 15, we agree. What do you guys think about adding this? And we work together as a committee to form a document that we think is actually going to work. I do believe we're behind the gun. I feel like we're in the same place last year. Even if let's say today we said, let's move forward with this 100%, let's go. I technically think we're further behind right now than we were last year. Because this got sent to the TDC last year and approved in September or October. And then it went to the BCC in either October or early November. We're already behind that. And then when I got to the BCC, they said, we're not going to make those changes. It's too late. It's going to hurt the small business. So I already think we're there. And if we're going to do it, I'd like to do it right. That's my personal opinion. And I do agree changes need to be made. I'm not saying that they don't.
I've got a comment on that. We've discussed it. We've hashed it out. I think the board needs to make a decision on what they want to do with these recommendations.
I got a couple comments, just quick comments. The first section, we're talking about leasing areas. I think that's more for the beach chair vendors. But then we go into the permit fees. Well, if you lease an area, you're also required to pay a permit fee. So I think it might need to be divided out into the beach chair vendors that might lease the areas, and then the permit fees more for the special event people.
It actually, it's laid out like that, so.
Well, you got fees here, that's your $1,000.
These are penalties, fees, and fines for citations. Okay.
Just change the cost of beach vending permits to $1,000.
Those are free.
So you need a beach vending permit if you're leasing here. That's my question.
You do, because that gives you the privilege to, because you might have more.
You're leasing it.
You might have more.
Doesn't that give you the privilege?
You might have other areas that you're vending. Litter vendors,
Well, you can't lease, you can't vend on another area that you're not leasing.
right now, the proposal is.
Well, okay,
Beach access.
special event permits, we got a detailed parking plan. What about loading? We just mentioned about the buses or whatever coming in, and, you know, you don't, typically the beach accesses don't have loading zones. You got a vehicle larger than a car.
Well, we thought a way, one thing that you need to do, and is when you pull up at Walney, okay, here you go, pull up, there you are. Don't block the walkway, park over there, you might have another 15 feet, but it's okay, just walk it, that's what we do. Because we don't want to hear that one person, because somebody's gonna call. Why do you even wanna have somebody call? Just walk, get your card, spend the money. If you're gonna be in the business, do it right, spend the money, and do what you need.
I mean, we're talking about beach vending most of this meeting. I mean, I still have a problem with the dog issues, you know? I mean, that was 30% of our code enforcement activity, was chasing dogs around the beach. So we've got 5 code enforcement officers, we're hiring 6 more. So, how much they make? 50 grand? Maybe 40 grand? So, I mean, we're gonna spend $120,000 a year to chase dogs around the beach? I mean, that seems ridiculous. If a dog has if there's a problem, he's in your trash or whatever, you call the dog catcher, they come pick the dog up.
None of the information we received as public input was, let's do away with dogs on the beach.
Well, I mean, it's not really a problem. I mean, most dog owners pick up the waste, that's the problem, the dog waste. Most of them do pick it up, you know. It's our reaction.
Okay, I just like to make a motion that we table this and try to set up a meeting date somewhere between November 28th and December 2nd. This is next, before the TDC meeting. Gives everybody a chance to get input, look at this, for the beach vendors to set up something, come back with different ideas, and then that way we can make a formal decision to the TDC board meeting of the 6th.
That date's gonna cut it short, or when do we have to have our submission stuff in for the TDC meeting? So,
When do you have,
I'm not sure, but,
It's usually almost 2 weeks, so we can after 2 weeks.
yeah.
well, the reason I'm giving that date is that the 24th is, what's Thanksgiving? 24th, right?
Can we,
We may not have a forum that, around that.
Yeah.
Why can't we try for maybe either the 11th or the 14th? Because that's barely 10 days, but if you can check the calendar, and then we're not starting from scratch again.
The 11th is Veterans Day.
Yeah, the 11th is Veterans Day.
We want to get this right. You know, we have the timing of how, you know, whether it's we wait till the next meeting, regular scheduled meeting or not. The next, you know, we need to get it right. Whether we do it in June or we do it in January. I realize it's a problem, but, you know, we don't want to do it wrong. And we got some problems with the way it's put downtown.
Well, Brian,
We need to table it, and then if we can.
We have a motion on the table.
We have a motion, we have a second
What is the motion for?
to table to a future meeting. We have a motion and a second, all those approved, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion carries. All right, motion's tabled. Any old business? Any comments? Public comments? Any more public comments? Okay, meeting's adjourned.
Appreciate it. Thanks for bringing that input. I hang around and talk, but I got another meeting to go to.
Oh, man, I want to talk.